it's Coach Tori, and this is Raising Runners. We will be talking about running, mental health, youth sport burnout, specialization in sports, motivation, encouragement, coaching, parenting, sleep, nutrition, really anything that you can think of that we as parents or coaches or just runners can do to help our young athletes. In today's episode, I get to talk with Ruth Cummings, who is a sports massage therapist and body, mind, life coach. She also has a podcast, which we talk about very briefly in today's episode, but she shares with us all of her awesome knowledge that she's gained through all of the really cool things that she's done. She talks about coaching her daughter's tennis team and what she's learned from that. She talks about being a sports massage therapist, listening to athletes' bodies, also how she helps athletes through different struggles, quirks, movement things. She obviously explains it way better than I just did, but super cool. So we talk about a lot of different things. So she shares so much awesome information in today's episode. We do have a couple instances of some connectivity issues, but I did my best to edit around all of that. So I don't think you lost any information, but definitely a really, really valuable listen. So check it out.
Hello, my name is Ruth Cummings. I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I have been a massage therapist, a sports massage therapist for 28 years. And I also do body, mind, life coaching for athletes. And a lot of my clients are younger. Just had one leave, he's 17, but I work with high school, college age teens. And I work with them on positive mindset, on how to be self-reliable, how to be proactive on injury care, and how to just start taking care of themselves instead of expecting or helping or anybody else to around them. And so I teach them just how to honor what they have and to be grateful for the ones around them, whether they have family. I work with several athletes who don't have family, at least blood family, and teaching them how to be reliable on themselves. And so to notice when they could be pushing themselves too hard, to have better communication skills with their coaches, their parents, their teammates, and themselves. And that's like that. And it's really fun. I've been doing it a long time. I've been coaching soccer and tennis since the 1990s. And so that's what else I do. I coach high school soccer, but I haven't done that in a long time. I'm now coaching high school tennis because my daughter had a concussion, not playing soccer, but she was a soccer player. She had a concussion by being hit by a bully in school and then had to stop playing soccer. So we would not have noticed tennis, but we did. And she is now, I just dropped her off this weekend, and she's a collegiate soccer or tennis player now. And so we would never have opened that door if it hadn't been shut for us. And so they didn't have a tennis coach at her high school. And I had you have to get whatever certified as like background checked. And I had all that stuff already done. And they were like, hey, do you want to coach tennis? So the tennis team was the most in shape and well-rounded that way. But then thank God, an actual tennis coach came and took the head coaching position. So I was just in charge of really positivity, which is really interesting in tennis. It's a lot different than other sports. And then I was also in charge of, and still now, not with this team, but just in dynamic warm-ups. So I'm very good at dynamic warm-ups, especially with this age group, like the high school age group and the college age group, where they want to be very, I don't want to say the word lazy, but the word, but adults do it too. We don't want to warm up before we run. We don't want to warm up before tennis. We just want to go. And so to really show them how important it is. And the only thing I really like to brag about is that we had 0 injuries in at least 4 seasons. So there you go. So that's and I have 2 kids, and then I've been married 22 years to John, who's awesome. And I have a golden doodle who stays in the massage room with me. He's a therapy dog, and that's really fun too.
What's the golden doodle's name?
Fred, of course.
That is so cute.
He's right here too. So if you hear some snoring, it's not me. So he thinks it's the nap room. I'm actually in my massage room because I have a podcast too. So I run my podcast out of my massage room. And so he's here. He thinks this is the nap room. Everybody comes here to nap. And he has his little space. And yeah, he's amazing. I think animals are just amazing with people, how they can calm them. And he does that. And just times I don't even realize that it's needed. And especially with, things that I'm not aware of, but he somehow senses that they're very sad or very worried about being here for their first time. And he just kind of bumps them, and he's very gentle. And they want to come back to see Fred. It's really interesting.
Well, that's what I was just thinking. I'm like, oh, that might be a good idea for a podcast, is just talking about like animals and therapy, right? Because there's so much you can go with that.
Yes, that's a great one. I'd love to hear that one.
Feeling that idea. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So now I feel like I'm going to have to remember a lot, because there was so much in your intro and there were so many different directions I want to go, which often I get like that. So you were coaching the tennis team while your daughter was on the team.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. They wouldn't have had a team, right? So I was like, okay, I don't know. I've never touched a tennis racket, but I will jump in, hit the ball, go hit the ball. And actually they were state champions their 3rd year, her just junior year. Yeah. So it was really fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think oftentimes, parents are volunteer coaches or whatever it is for like at a younger level. But I feel like you don't always hear about parents as coaches, especially as they get into the high school, college age. Talk
Sure.
about that. And then also, I'll let you answer that first.
Okay. I know we have a lot to talk about. I can't wait. So yeah, I'll tell you that. So I was a soccer coach in high school for 9, and that was a little young. So that was one thing that was a little bit too young to be a head coach. I was actually a head coach at around 22, I think, and that was a little too young. But fast forward to my daughter being in high school and no coach there and jumping in. There are some caveats. There are some pitfalls that can happen. So I would not. So you can either go 2 ways, I think, as a coach of your kid on your own team. You can either, and maybe this is unfair, but you can either make them the star, or you can kind of ignore them. And it's really challenging to be in the middle. And I would love to hear my daughter's response to this. But so my daughter is she doesn't like much attention from me. So I allowed her to be away. I would do the warm up. We wouldn't have eye contact, kind of a fist pump at the beginning. And then we wouldn't contact after that. So I would take different players to warm up with, but she did do the warm ups with me. And then she would go off with, doing little tennis stuff, like 2 or 3 courts away. And so we would have, I don't know, we had 4 courts going, right? And so I have the first 2 courts, and our other coach, the head coach, had the higher players, and she was with the higher players. So that's how I managed it with her. I think you definitely have to manage how you respond to your kid, and you can't give them too much attention, and you can't completely ignore them. And that is a tricky area. There are days where we would go home, both of us, angry. And there are days where it went really, really well. And so if she was playing poorly, then I was the target oftentimes. And I think that's so that's the challenge. And that's in any sport. I coach both my kids in soccer and then my son in tennis. And that's also the same thing. You have to manage that, the tight wire of too much attention and ignoring them and not letting them. And it all depends on the kid, because if the kid needs attention, or then you have to back off. And if they're the type of kid who is quiet and won't say anything unless you draw them in, then there's that, they need a little bit more attention from you. So my son, for example, he's quieter, and my daughter is, the leader of the team. And so there's, that difference between the two. But it was challenging. I mean, I would love to, if anybody ever needed to talk to me, I'm happy to call them or have them call me, because and there's not many of us out there. I mean, I can't say that. There's millions of us that coach our kids, right? But it could be challenging, and sometimes the other parents don't understand, right? You can't really talk to them about it, and at the time, because there's this, are you favoring your own kid? There's that conversation, right? And then they want to talk to you. If you talk to another parent from another player on the team, they want to talk to you about their kid. And so you have to find someone to talk to for support outside the team and outside possibly sports altogether, to get, hey, what should I do in this situation? And so that was a little challenging at times. And the head coach and I had each other to talk to, and that was really helpful. But not everybody has that. And so, yeah, you know what? I would totally do it over again. I would completely do it again. So does that answer your question? Is that too long?
Oh, no, nothing's going to be too long, because the more you talk, the less I talk, which is probably always good. So, yeah, I mean, and I'm sure you're going to look back too, and like, you're hopefully going to remember just all the positive stuff. Right. And like, that's kind of what we always hope as parents. But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine at this point, with all the dynamics, like you're saying, I didn't even think of like parent to parent, parent to coach. But then it's like, okay, now also like players to players, like, the kids might say at some point that you're favoring your daughter, and like how she has to navigate that as a teenager. So yeah, I imagine it was probably tough for both of you, but I'm sure beneficial in the end. Can you talk a little bit about, because I don't know much about tennis. Obviously I've seen tennis. I think I went to tennis camp once when I was like 7. So obviously I know nothing about tennis, but I know
a lot of us do.
But like, I can see that it is like a lot of sports, but the mental aspect is huge. Just because you have to be focused. I know those games can be long. The focus, it is just you versus someone. It's you versus the points. Can you talk a little bit? Because I imagine you worked with the players also, just like from a mindset standpoint, but can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Sure. There's a couple stories that are definitely my favorites. In the Metro Championship, 2 of our players are playing the finals for doubles. They're both juniors, seniors that year. So this is it for them. And they had beaten this team before. And they were down, I believe, 5-1. So in tennis, you go to 6. So once you get to that 6th game, then it's over. So they were at a critical point. I had been down coaching some other players, because in tennis, usually you have 6 singles go at once or 3 doubles. So at any point, you have 6 players to coach. Does that make sense? So either you're coaching the singles players or you're coaching the doubles. So it's really better if you have 2 coaches, because one can stay on one court, and then the rest of us, the next, like I could walk around, or the other coach could walk around. So I was down far away, and I didn't realize that they were down, but I saw, so you can, in tennis, you can only talk to them when they switch sides. So they were switching sides. So that's when I can go talk to them, and I could see their shoulders down. I could see that they were down. And so I went over there, and they were just a mess, crying, just beside themselves. And they're both college players. So like, they went on to play in college also. They were just at my house before they left. They're just sweet. I love these girls. They're my daughter's best friends. So they had just fallen apart. And so as a coach at that time, it's better to have a good cop, bad cop. And this is my job. I don't do the technical stuff. The only thing I'm doing is talking about their mental attitude. And they know that. So if you establish that earlier in soccer, in basketball, in football, any sport, if you establish the person who's going to do the positive talk, then they know you're coming. They can see you're coming. They could see me coming. They start crying like that. Like that's who I am for them. Right. So I'm like, all right, let's take a deep breath. And I asked them, they laugh about this, but I asked them to look at the clouds and look at the sky and to take a breath and what was their favorite part of their day. And I only have 3 minutes. Okay. So I'm like, come on, but I don't rush them. And I said, hey, do you think these girls practice harder than you? No. I said, okay. So do you believe that they're a better team than you? No. And so I just tried to bring up the confidence in certain statements. And so the end of the story is that they came back and won 7-5. And we talk about that. They bring that up. Another one that I want to bring up is there was a player who's in college with my daughter. He is very good, and he was cramping, full body cramping, having to take him off the court on a stretcher type of cramping for years. And it would happen in a semifinal or a final match. So I met him through my daughter, and he was asking me, I know you do this for a living. How can you help me? So I walked him through how to notice when your body is responding to your negativity. So, for example, in tennis, it's perfect because let's say you hit a ball and it goes out. There's all these things that happen. So if you slow that down, the ball goes out, you get mad at yourself right away. Like there's this of energy that just stops you. And then you start thinking about the next point. You start thinking about the end of the match. All these things start swirling around. And so my suggestion to him is, okay, notice when your body starts to not just, it won't cramp yet. It will like, and you will stop breathing, and you will do certain things the same every time right before you cramp. And if you can change your mindset to same thing, watch the sky, or if you're indoors, watch around you, smell your racket, notice how your clothes feel on your body, notice the smell of the ball, and like just different things, pull yourself into that moment, and then just think about one shot at a time. And he was able to completely stop cramping. And then he won NCAA championships last year, and became an All-American. So like that was another one where you as a parent, you can allow your child to be aware of the positive things between points. So in soccer, it's challenging because it's this one solid thing. Running, you can do it by step. So if a runner comes to me and says, okay, I'm having knee pain. Okay. And they've done everything. I've done an MRI, I've gone to chiropractor, I've done acupuncture, I've done everything, and it still happens. And there's a way that you could help them by, you can think about every step. For example, how is your toe? Is your right front toe, is it leaning in? Are you leaning on your pinky? And just think about the very, very specific 1 millisecond at a time. And are you breathing in with your left foot? Just like a swimmer. Are you breathing in with your right foot, right arm? So like a swimmer they'll get neck pain if they're only swimming and and I'm sorry, only breathing to one direction. So every sport has their isms that create tension in the body. And if they can see that time, that moment in time, and relax in that moment in time, then they can usually get back to the best peak performance that they can. And but it's such a fascinating time, and you have to be really intimate with your athlete. They have to trust you, and you have to give them a lot of respect. And that's why sometimes it's hard for the parents not to be able to do it. It's not that there's not respect, but that there's triggers that are very challenging. And the triggers, like if you smile, they're like, don't say that. And you're like, wait, I just smiled. So for example, for me to give coaching to my daughter was very challenging. And I could tell if I could or not. When I was walking up to her, I could tell this is a yes or this is a don't say that moment in time. And I think it's just so fascinating how we can change. So this tennis player, collegiate tennis player, he was able to change his body's reaction to disappointment and start to have hope no matter what. And it was a really interesting transition in his life, not just in his tennis playing. And yeah, it was really fascinating. And I have a lot of stories like that, but I just love this work.
So I only know running. So I imagine you must have knowledge of like every sport to be able to break it down like that with like swim. I mean, again, I kind of knew swimmers, that makes sense when you're explaining with the breathing. But so how did you get all that? I guess, how'd you get all that knowledge about all the different sports? Are you doing research as you're talking to the individuals, or is it you already gained this knowledge? Or because obviously you need to have like you're saying, I mean, you have to have a real intimate relationship with the athletes, but also with sports and movement in general, right?
Yeah, it's not like I went off and played all these, or it definitely comes from the player. And so what I do from runner to, running, but let's look at like you can even understand a baseball player. Let's say I work with a lot of pitchers, and there is this specific way that they set up and then they take a breath. Well, that's what I want them to tell me. I'm like, okay, walk me through right now. I can't without just in my mind's eye. I need to know how you walk through this. And then ask them certain questions. Where's your left elbow? Okay, where is your toe? Where is your do you curl your toes in when you're landing? And I just put it together like that. So for example, when I'm working with quarterbacks, one of the things about quarterbacks is that when they get the snap, right? They get the ball and then they have to back up. In those few steps going back, there's a lot that happens in their mind. There's a lot of fear. I'm going to trip on my own feet. I don't know which direction to go. I've hurt my knee, so I might hurt it on backing up. And so I work with them to see it before they do it. And if you can, and that's how I know these things intimately, because I don't even have to go see them play. I am really putting in my mind's eye what they're telling me. And so for a football player, for example, one of the guys I'm working with right now, he's playing in college. He's starting. It's so exciting. He just got that the word yesterday. And so when he's backing up, he has an injury on his left foot. And so he would much rather roll back to the right than roll back to the left. But it's not up to him. So if there's a roll back to his left, then all the stuff starts happening. And he's like 5 of 5 to the right and 0 to 5 on the left. All right, so let's look at why. And the whole thing is, I'm afraid that I'm going to trip on my left foot. Okay, so let's just concentrate on that left foot. See it before you go. Just keep seeing that foot go back. And then what does your right foot do? Just walk yourself through the visualization. What is your breath doing? Where is the ball? Where are your eyes? Do you see your receiver? Do you see your blocking? Your guys up front, your O-line is doing a great job. You trust all of your teammates. Okay, you trust them, you trust your coaches, now trust your foot. And then he was 5-5. So there's just, it's so cool, like and a lot of times we don't know that we don't know. And so let's take it back to running. Let's say I just worked on a guy a couple hours ago who had he has severe left hamstring pain, and really good marathoner, like under 230, so like, and there's there so he had an issue on his, let's see, yeah, on his left insole. So I found a spot there. And what happens is we don't even know that we have that happening. That's why going to see a sports massage therapist is really helpful. And a lot of, you don't even have to do the massage therapist part, like sports people in general. Like if you go to a chiropractor, if you go to acupuncturists that work on athletes, a lot of times they are athletes and they can walk you through, why is that happening? So for me, I want to know the epicenter. I want to know, why is that happening? So what he's going to go do now is, he was telling me that he was landing flat-footed. And so he's going to go change that right now and then tell me in the next day or two how that happens. But it doesn't even come to him until I'm like, wow, this is, are you landing on your toe? What are you landing on? And then he goes, oh my gosh, I'm landing flat-footed on the left side because I'm so worried about my knee. Right. And then there's like, okay, why are you worried about your knee? Okay. And then we could go up, because the knee will go up to the hip, and then I can follow that up to the right shoulder. So there's, it's a fascinating, that's a little complicated. I'm sorry, but it is a fun one though, to go up to the right shoulder. Right shoulder pec minor is really important in running. So pec minor is secondary breathing muscle. It also has to do with confidence.
Oh,
So
well,
that's how I can tell, like, if someone, like, I read people, I do body audits. So people, because I can't, see everybody, but I can see people on Zoom and I can tell them what I see. And the pec minor muscle is very telling for many people's bodies.
well, that kind of leads into what my next question was going to be, was kind of like, where do you start? Because I know there's like the physical aspect, but then like the mental aspect, but also people often have the inability initially to be that aware of themselves and what they're doing. So I also imagine when you're asking about, like, what are you doing when you're throwing? Like, people might have to act that out and, all those things. So yeah, I guess, where do you start? Especially if you are doing like Zoom and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that you have to ask for on my side, I have to ask the right questions. And that's the questions. Yeah, I know what questions to ask for the athlete themselves. One of the things to start recognizing in yourself is if you go past the pain. So are you running past the pain? So like a lot of us do this, A personality, I'm an A personality. And like, a lot of athletes, not most, just a lot of athletes are. And like, so we get the little twinge in our, let's just say our knee, and we just run through it. And then all of a sudden that becomes way bigger issue. And let's just say in life, we get tension headaches, for example, or our neck is really tense, and we don't let that ever come down. So I'll have guys, or let's say I just have, a mom come in here, say she's 35, she was a college athlete, she's still running really, really heavily. And she'll come in and she'll say, this is very common. I want you to massage me as hard as you possibly can. So that's the first flag for me. When someone says that, or when I'm coaching them and they're like, I just want to finish 50,000 things. I'm like, okay. So when we are too hard on ourselves and not as forgiving, then that's the first.
Massaging as hard as possible being a flag number one.
Oh, right.
million things they want to get done when you're coaching them.
Yes. So if that's your type of personality, where if you want as much pressure on your body as possible without noticing what the body wants, that is a big um, I invite you, how about this? I invite you to look at that differently. So in my podcast is called Your Body Advocate, and that's me. I'm the advocate for your body. And why is that? Because a lot of people come in saying, be as hard on my body as you possibly can be. And when I touch the body, it jumps away from me. And I realized at my first, say, I don't know, 500 massages, I'm on like 50,000 hours of massage at the moment. So it's like I've just been doing this for a very, very long time. And when I see or when I hear that, and then I feel that the body has a different response to me than the person asking me to go as deep as I can. And I'm realizing that the body is asking for gentleness. The body is asking for calm, and it's asking for something different than the person's words are asking for. So that if you can notice that in yourself, and it's not just in sports, but if you are being too hard on yourself, if you are your own worst critic, if you won't let yourself rest, you're not doing the self-care that you need, but you're doing everybody else's self-care around you. You're making sure everybody's good at work, making sure everybody's good at home, but when it comes to your own self-care, then it's not as important, and it becomes secondary, if not it's completely goes away altogether. Then that's the number one thing that I would say to notice, so you can start being gentle with yourself.
Yeah, I feel like that's such a great message. And I definitely want you to talk about your podcast, but not yet. Just because I have a question that's probably not the most intelligent question, but how is sports massage therapy different from if I was going to go to like the Massage Envy in the shopping center? Is it different, or is it just you focus on athletes?
That's a great question. And they do have sports massage at the Massage Envies.
Oh, well, no shade to Massage Envy then. Sorry.
Well, there is shade to Massage Envy
Oh.
from my profession. But it's for reasons we don't need to go into today. But I think that one of the things is about massage that's different than sports massage is that it's the experience usually of the therapist. So just because someone says they do sports massage, I would ask how long they've been doing it, and are they an athlete themselves? How do they understand, how muscles respond, how muscles heal? If they're talking about lactic acid, then they are very far behind. And if they're using ice instead of heat in a massage session, then only for ice massage on certain parts of the leg, maybe the hand, but then ending with heat. So there's a lot, that's I teach sports massage at one of the schools here, and um, so the difference I would say would be um, the basic answer is experience. Also, there's deep tissue massage, right? And that, a lot of people feel like the deepest massage is the best answer to all of their problems. And I can tell you I have bruised people, and then I work on NFL athletes, I work on UFC guys, and there is a better way where you can go deep into the tissue and then come out again, where the tissue starts to trust the therapist. And when you can have that trust between your hands and the muscle, then much more can get done. You can actually have the person leave more injured, or not, going backwards. And I think that is, not what we're looking for. So I go deep on like, say, the hamstrings is one of the deepest, on the glutes really deep, some of the calf muscles, but I back off. So I find the spot, and then I back off, and then I work around it. And there's just so many techniques out there that help a muscle calm down. So that's a loaded question, and but sorry about the shade for Massage Envy. The only problem is that sometimes they don't treat their therapist very well, and they're owned separately, so that's not always the case. But anyway, I have some stories about that I won't talk about today.
Well, now that has me on I guess like massage or just like sports recovery questions, myths kind of thing. So I don't even know if people still do cupping, but I know cupping was like a huge thing a couple years ago. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is that actually beneficial? Is it a case by case thing? For anyone who doesn't know what it is, you probably can explain it better than I could, because I would just say it's putting cups on people, which I'm sure is not right.
Yeah, there's different types of cupping. And I don't use cupping. It's you put like let's say a glass, let's say just a small glass on, and it's usually round, and you put it on the skin. And in traditional Chinese medicine, you use heat to start a vacuum, and it starts pulling the tissues up, and it can pull out a lot of toxic, it can be very, very dark purple blood, and it kind of bruises like that. And then there's the cups that just use suction, and they have like a little that suctions. And I think they work for some people. I think that there are literally thousands of things that you could do, modalities, and you have to find the one that's best for you. And it's not going to be one. I would say it's going to be a combination of 7. So, some people are great at foam rolling. Some people, break their ribs. So don't do that, right? Like, some people over roll. If you're over rolling your IT band, let's consider, I would invite you to try something different, and maybe go up onto instead of the IT band, go up on the outer quad muscle, the vastus lateralis. It's like right above, or go below it to your outside hamstring. And so, like, there are ways to use different modalities. I love using I use ice massage on people who have shin splints, but I also do a really cool stretch with them so that to be proactive about shin splints if they've had shin splints before. But I always tell people to end with heat. So if you're going to use ice, if you're going to do an ice bath, for example, the football players I work with, please go end with a hot shower, or put some heat on whatever area is really bothering you. And so there's so many modalities, and you have to find what's best for you. Everybody should be stretching. Everybody should be hydrating. Everybody should be getting a lot of rest, and a rest should be part of your self-care routine in the midst of your major seasons. So, and sometimes, unfortunately, a lot of coaches don't allow that. And I feel like that's really unfortunate, and they put especially their college athletes, at risk.
That just reminded me that you initially were talking, forever ago when we started talking about tennis, but your dynamic warm up. And I wanted to ask you about that because you said you've had no injured players, right?
Right.
And I talked to, because I often am coaching kids around like 8, 9, 10. So of course, like, they don't, quote, need to warm up because they're just limber and ready to go all the time. But I talk to them about like how important that is for us to get into this routine, but also to get our bodies ready to go and all these things. So can you give us a little info about, you don't have to share all your secrets about your dynamic warm up, but can you tell us a little bit about what the warm up is, or the things that you kind of incorporated or focused on? Because I imagine that had a huge part in why the athletes weren't getting injured.
Sure. I think what you have to do is you have to find fun activities that kind of look like your sport to do, that they will think is fun, and then they will learn and do on their own. So, for example, for soccer, for example, for girls, 85% of soccer players are going to tear an ACL. That's a really, really bad statistic. So one of the things they should be doing is like they could at a standstill jump from a standstill, jump from your left foot onto your right foot at a 45-degree angle, and then land on your right foot and stabilize yourself. So you just go bing and stop. And then you jump from your right foot without putting your left foot down to your left foot. So you go right foot, left foot, 45-degree angle, bing and stop. And that's a very common, I think, at least in my city, that's one of the just simple ones that helps the knee get limber and warmed up before you start doing things in tennis. For tennis example, we do toe taps. So tapping in place like you're jumping rope, and then tapping over the white line. So right foot, left foot over, right foot, left foot, back over. And we do, how many can you do in 10 seconds? And they time themselves, and they have a little race, or a little competition on how many they can get by the end of the week and the end of the season, that kind of thing. You just have to make sure that you do every body part. So if you don't have, like, I have a fence at tennis, and so I'm able to have the girls grab the fence, and then we do some warm-ups using their body weight. But if you don't have a fence, you can do it on the ground, even for soccer players, even for people, even for runners. It is important to get your arms warmed up. So you could do it against, for example, a wall. You could do like a standing push-up. So it's not a full push-up. And even for the tennis players, I'm not starting with full push-ups. So just to get them, you need to get blood into the muscle that they're using. And then you start with just moving it, and then you get a little bit more and a little bit more. I'm assuming everybody knows maybe what dynamic warm-up is, but like you start slow in the motion that your sport is. And so, for example, tennis, we're getting our arm back and forward, or following through in a playful motion. And then you add a little bit of weight to it, and then you add a little bit more weight to it, and then you start playing tennis. And so you want to do that for each joint. So, for example, in tennis, you also are using your ankles a lot. So that's why we're doing tap tap. We're tapping forward and backwards. It's a big one because tennis side to side, and you want to have that warmed up so that their ankles, their knee, and their hip isn't cold when they're going to run to the side to get a point, and they're sliding to stop to get that point. Then you also want twisting, for tennis and soccer, and running also. For running, I would say to really work on deep breathing for at least a minute and get your diaphragm going. I would say to work on bringing your shoulders down. How would you do that? The dynamic warm up for that would be to pull your shoulders as hard as you can to your ears and let them fall, and then pull them up to your ears and let them fall. And so you come up with a fun way to make that memorable, so that if you have to walk away and talk to a parent or a late kid or something, that they know how to continue their dynamic warm up. So you just add things for each body part.
Yeah, well, and as you're saying that, I was like trying to think of all the things that we do. And one of the big things with our kids is we make sure that we try not to change our warm-up routine as much as possible, because I do want them to know it if I am talking, or if I even forget. Like, I want them also to take ownership of it as like, this is something we are doing to get ourselves ready to run. And I imagine other sports do cool downs too, but I know running culture, we're big on our cool down, which is like our slow run. And then our static stretching, which I know there's always stuff to be said about static stretching. But do you have a cool down routine that you often have your athletes do? Kind of what does that look like? Because I know we already talked about, like, the ice, the heat, massage, those kinds of things. But before we get to that.
Yeah, we do. We also end with our dynamic warm up, but not as long. And then, the static stretching, especially for the older kids in high school and in college, you can do some, but I encourage that they do that like at home, before they go to bed, in bed, when they wake up, and to, when they're doing their homework, to get in positions that have, that can be a static stretch for a hamstring or for their back or their arm or whatever. So usually we just do a dynamic warm up again to cool down. But I think static stretching is good at the end for sure. Um, it's just that at the end of practice for me at that age group, especially high school and college, they are worried about their homework. They need to get home. They're hungry. They're frustrated. They're tired. And so, but warming up after, warming down after is always, always important.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you validated the static stretching because as a runner, that is one of my favorite things to do. So,
Good. Yeah, good.
well, I mean, if we have to do accessory stuff, I feel like it's static stretching. I feel like we are going to be running out of time. But before we do that, I would love if you could talk just a little bit about, I know you mentioned your podcast and the name of your podcast, but just give us a little, like what is your podcast about, things you talk about, and then also where can we find you if anybody has questions or, looking to do some coaching on mindset, any of those kinds of things.
Sure. So, let's see. My podcast is called Your Body Advocate, and that's on the Spotify and Google and Apple Podcasts and all the podcasts. And my coaching site is ruthcummings.com, and then my massage site is athletictouch.com. And then I like to use Instagram, and it's Ruth Cummings Coaching on Instagram. That's kind of my daughter just did that for me all summer, so that's what I'm using. And I actually have a link to your listeners for an ebook that I have, and it's to get emotional pain out of their body. And it's a fun little ebook, and it's free, and you could just go download it. And I think I gave you the link. If I didn't, I will add it. You can also find that link on ruthcummings.com. So that's how to get a hold of me. And I work online on Zoom. I am booked until February, but I am happy to. I will do a 20-minute call with people if they need something. And if anybody's in dire straits, if anybody, I don't want to say suicidal. I don't work with people who are suicidal, but if you're having a really hard day, I'm happy if we can get a hold of each other to talk to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I'll make sure I get all the links from you and make sure every link is in the notes so people know how to get in touch with you to make it easy. Thank you so, so much for taking the time. I really appreciate all of the info that you shared today.
Oh, you're welcome. This is really fun. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it a lot. Thanks, Tori.
I just want to thank Ruth again for taking the time to talk with me because everything we talked about was so awesome, so important. I think I definitely learned a whole lot. Make sure you check her out. Her website and Instagram is linked in the show notes. Also, check out her podcast, Body Advocate with Ruth Cummings. Super awesome. So, check all those things out. Just a couple other updates. Let me see, where are we at? May 2023 is so far away from now, but we are doing an awesome running event that benefits the Youth Mental Health Project. Who doesn't want to support youth mental health, right? So the link for that is also in the notes. We are looking for business sponsors. It's a great way to just get your name out in a bunch of different places, not just locally to me, but all over the internet, on the podcast, all kinds of stuff. We also are looking for people who want to run. So there is going to be a 1-hour distance challenge and also a 5K. The 5K is just going to be for local people, but the 1-hour challenge is going to be local and virtual. We are going to have a Strava group. So everybody's going to get to compete and have fun together at the same time in May. So feel free to check that out. Like I said, the link is in the notes. Also, just to help promote and spread some of the word, I will be doing a 12-hour run the week before we have our running event. And just to kind of make it extra fun, if you donate the dollar amount of miles you think I'm going to run, whoever is the closest at that point will win a prize. And I'll talk about that probably every week from now until May. So sorry, you'll get bored of hearing it, but just a little extra fun, prize challenge for people to donate to the Youth Mental Health Project. I think that's kind of it for now. Thanks for listening. Thank you for tuning into Raising Runners. New episodes every Tuesday, and we are always looking to talk to people about running, mental health, or anything along the spectrum that can help our young athletes, or just talking to runners or parents and coaches of our young runners as well. Hopefully you find our resources helpful. If you have questions, comments, or anything else, feel free to email me at marikeyrunclub@gmail.com.